So Dean just asked me, how did we know to contact him? Which was a question. So when we started looking to see who had a voice in this space, I came across something terrible. And the unique perspective that he brought to it truly has a unique voice, truly a unique perspective, and I'm very glad that we came across him. And he's just an awesome person. So please join me in welcoming Dean.
Thank you for that introduction, Tricia. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good. Hi, I'm Mayday Trippe. I'm someone who likes drawing comic books. I've been drawing since I was in 3rd grade when a friend showed me how to draw Ninja Turtles. I moved to another school in 4th grade, and I was the only kid who drew Ninja Turtles. I cornered that market. A lot of my work is focused on kids superheroes. I've just always found that fun, the idea of little kids that were really powerful. So these are some of the ones that me and my son have come up with over the years. But I've also done more grown-up heroes. Done some covers for comics and magazines. This is a comic I did with Stan Lee a few years ago. This is one that's not out yet. It's in previews next month. But the reason why I make comics, the reason why I like comics, is because of Batman. I've always liked Batman. Here's me as Batman a lot of times in my life, including just last year. But a few years ago, I ended up feeling the need to write a book about why I've always liked Batman and why I take superheroes way too seriously. And it's because it comes from a real serious emotional place. So when I was 6 years old, my parents had gotten divorced, and my biological father would do the weekend visit thing, to go do something special with me and my sister. And then one time he didn't show up. So I'm sitting outside, missing all the cool Saturday morning cartoons, waiting for this guy. Meanwhile, my mom had started dating this really wonderful dude who would become my stepdad. And she just wanted a weekend off to be able to go out with the man who I would call dad for the rest of my life. This slideshow has gone out of order. Just give me 1 second for some technical. The reason why I've messed up my slideshow is because I wanted to add in that picture of me and my Batman costume. Like Icarus. So I'm going to have to show this to you in a slightly different format. But you still enjoy my. So, like I said, I was waiting. And then a deacon from my mom's church had offered to babysit me and my sister for the weekend. And unfortunately, that weekend, the teenage son in that family ended up abusing me and my sister. Since doing this book, I've heard from literally hundreds of survivors, and I haven't heard a story that isn't worse than mine. Every single one has been a worse story than mine. I had one weekend and one more weekend where I was abused. I had told my mom I didn't want to go back to that place. Just like a lot of parents, she assumed it was normal kid reasons. I don't know what those are. But I didn't want to go back, and so we went back one more time. I was abused again. And fortunately for me and for my sister, my mom figured out what had happened. From my sister, not from me. Because my abuser showed me his father's gun and told me that if we told anybody, he would kill my family. So I had nightmares about that for the rest of my childhood. But my mom figured out what had happened and did the appropriate things. This older boy was arrested, ended up going to juvenile detention. I saw a psychologist for, I think, 3 visits. She told my mom I was fine, because that's what I told her. These days they tell you not to believe children when they say they're okay, right after traumas. But what happened to me was, I went back to school. And it's really strange to return to school after you've realized how terrible the world is. That there are things that will just ruin your entire understanding of the world. And then you're around all these kids who don't know that. So I became kind of a loner. Like taking long walks in the woods. I like drawing. And then I became a loner in elementary school. But I did. And but then this really lucky thing happened to me in 5th grade. Where up until that point, like, you guys have seen me walking around with my Captain America shield, and you knew I was going to talk about Batman. So I liked superheroes as much as the next guy in elementary school. Most kids like superheroes to some degree. You play superheroes on the playground. I used to be Green Lantern. But in 5th grade, my teacher for the last week of school showed us the 1989 Batman movie, which they'd rushed to be out on VHS. And this was a real treat. Like, I'd seen the Adam West show. This is the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton Batman movie. So, in that story, I found out Batman's origin, why he does all this stuff. That wasn't included in the Adam West show, or like the Super Friends. It's because he's a childhood trauma survivor. And it was like I finally saw, this is like, 4 years after what I had survived, but I finally saw a path towards rebuilding yourself. This is a guy who experiences a terrible crime and then becomes the thing to stop that from happening to anyone else. I bought my first comic book that week. My mom helped make me a Batman costume. I started to see myself in that very stark terms of like, there's good guys and bad guys. When I was bullied in school, it was often because I would stand in between some bully and some other kid who was being bullied, because that's what you do. I can't tell you how many times I got in school suspension just for getting hit in the face. But yeah, so I really fell in love with comics and this whole world. It appealed to a lot of things I liked, and when a lot of other things that were more popular for boys and men, like traditional masculine stuff, like didn't appeal to me. And I was afraid of older boys, which you might imagine. I built this kind of secret armor where you couldn't get to me because I had this symbol on. But having experienced a crime, being a fan of superheroes and crime fighters, I got into cop shows, and I still like cop shows. But there's a really pervasive myth that gets spun around over and over again on cop shows whenever they deal with child abuse. And it's that the victim becomes the abuser. And I don't really blame writers. Most writers who write, I write comic books, when you write stuff, you're drawing on your knowledge. Well, here's like a thing most people don't like to talk about. Most of the stuff y'all know didn't come from school. It came from movies and Bugs Bunny cartoons. Like, you learn things from these sources, and you kind of put it all together. And you hear stuff anecdotally when speakers talk at church and things like that. Like, the Inuit have 1,000 words for snow. They don't. They use compound words. Sharks have to keep swimming or they'll die. That's maybe true for a couple of species, but we don't know for sure. It's definitely not for the ones we've seen sleeping. But if you're a crime show writer and you've seen other SVU episodes, you know that someone made you this way. The victim becomes the abuser and the cycle never ends. There's actually an episode of Medium, which is another show I like, where like she could see the ghosts of people, and she could see the abused ghost who abused the ghost who abused the ghost. That stuff's horrifying. That's a lie that's worth shutting down. But I didn't know that at the time, and so I made a pact with myself that if I ever had sexual thoughts about children, I'd kill myself. Because, like Batman, I had made it my mission to protect the innocent, even if it meant from me. But like I said, I was really into comic books. That's like a thing. I ended up going to school for comics. I have a degree in comic books, which you guys should look into if you want to impress 12-year-olds. My favorite writer is this guy, Grant Morrison. He's a Scottish writer. And, he's written a bunch of books. But one of the trippy ideas that's in a lot of his books are the idea of the multiverse. The idea that every possible outcome is explored in other universes. You know, there's scientists who believe that's true. They've done particle physics experiments that are like, no, it actually is true. That every outcome is determined by other universes. So that got me thinking, because of all these comic books, if everything could happen somewhere, what if there's a universe out there where I am that? Or what if there's a universe out there where what happened to me didn't happen to me? I know from reading Batman comics that sometimes he goes to other universes, him and Superman. So what would happen if I wrote a story where he came to my universe and saved me? And I'm going to tell you, like, I was scared to draw this comic because I thought I might unwrite reality. But I finally did. And this is what it looked like. And Batman, I'm gonna read Batman's voice now. Hello, Dean. Do you know who I am? You look like Batman. That's right, I'm Batman. I'm here to save you from something terrible. You know, I'm not really supposed to let people from your Earth know that we're all real. But then I figured, Dean Trippe already knows something. You'll be safe here. So I drew that comic. I cried about it. I felt really good. It seems really weird, but there's something really special when you've survived a crime to just see a picture of a superhero you care about with his arm around you. I drew this picture of Batman saving me at 6 years old, and I felt like that. But that night, just because the thoughts have been in my head, I looked up the Wikipedia entry on child sexual abuse again, which I've looked at over the years. But I found this addition to it that I hadn't seen before, that said, the experience of sexual abuse as a child was previously thought to be a strong risk factor, but research does not show a causal relationship, as the vast majority of sexually abused children do not grow up to be adult offenders, which I figured that one, right? Because I'd heard the statistics on child abuse. It's like I was in high school and I heard that like 1 in 3 children have been abused. I was like, what's people? Now, I think at the time I heard 1 in 6 for children, but I think it's higher than that if you're doing males and girls now. But I figured that most of the victims don't grow up to be offenders, right? But here's the kicker. Nor do the majority of adult offenders report child sexual abuse. It's not just not true for victims. It's not true for offenders. This myth is busted. There have been all these stories told, and you're hearing it over and over again, so much so that, and I've spoken to other victims like me, who had suicide pacts with themselves. We're not the problem. We all know now, because of statistics and more reporting on this issue, that the vast majority of rapes and sexual crimes are committed by a small number of people who get away with it for years. perpetrate. Anyway, when I figured this out, I could finally put down the invisible gun I'd had next to my head, and Batman said the thing Batman said in a bunch of stories I've read, no guns. And as a father, it really changed the relationship I have with my son, where I didn't have to be the danger. I could be the hero. Let's see if I can find the thing after that. So there's me and my son. Me and my mom, his grandmommy, made these costumes. And this is my family now. Since doing the book, this is the craziest thing. So, I had gotten divorced. I was a single dad and taking care of that super beautiful boy. I had wanted a girl, but I ended up with the best boy on the planet. He's okay. He's an angel that lights the world. Y'all are lucky. But I was doing that book, when I was working on something terrible, I met this girl, and I'd started dating. It had been a couple years since I got divorced, and I wasn't planning on getting remarried, but I met the most wonderful woman, and now we have a family together. She had 2 kids, but we can be whole super teams now. So, after my book had been released digitally, we ended up doing a Kickstarter, released it as a print book, and I partnered with Iron Circus Comics to publish it. For the print edition, I did this extra epilogue. This is for the extra nerdy kids in the room. You can follow along. Because I drew this little comic about the worst thing that ever happened to me. And now I have to tell everyone about it. I'm scared about what it'll mean, but I have to do this. There are thousands of people just like me who need this story. People who need to know they aren't monsters just because they were used. I'm lighting this signal because I know how dark the night is. This is my friend James. I love this, man. Everybody's in here. Almost. That's my story.